today, my favorite. Why do I love coil pots? Because you can get any shape you want. So coil pots are great for creating organic shapes, which are more curvy, natural shapes. And if I can't wheel throw something, I can coil pot it. I can make it with a coil pot. And so getting all those ins and outs and the different parts of the pot are really easy to do, or sort of easy to do with a coil pot. So we start with some clay, and I've already rolled some coils out here. You should know how to do that already. Remember, the better the coils, the better the pot. I'm going to start by making the base. I choose to make my base just like the Native Americans did. So this is another really old method of construction. And so I pat it into a ball, and then I just start to smash that ball down. So I'm slapping that clay in my hands, but then I rotate it, smack, rotate, smack, rotate. And I'm using my palms, and by rotating it, I'm getting hopefully a more even slab. If I just do this, it's gonna get the curve of my hand in there. So keep rotating it, and you're basically making a pancake or the start of like a tortilla. And you're going to start to pound this down until it's about a 1/4 inch thick. We always want 1/4 inch thick walls whenever we're making any vessels, for the most part. So I want this to be a 1/4 inch thick. If it's a 1/2 inch, that would be fine since it's the base. How do I know? Grab a ruler, check it, and be like, all right, cool, I'm at like a 1/4 inch right now. Does not have to be perfect. Could you roll a slab to do this? For sure, but I think this is faster. And if you don't know how to roll a slab, then we do it this method. The base of this will be the base of my coil pot. The base can be any shape you want. So I have a circle here. I might need to refine that circle. So I might need to trim it up if it's not very circular. I could also make it oval. I can make it square. I can make it star shaped. You can make your base any shape you want. I'm going to show you the basic cylinder kind of approach. But keep in mind that the more creative you are, the better it is, and that there really aren't too many limits to that. Okay, so I have my base 1/4 inch thick. I leave that here. When I go to start to build, I need to have some good coils. Remember, a good coil is a coil that's uniform and even, not thick and thin in spots, and it's about the size of my pin tool handle. And what I'm gonna do is build this one coil at a time. It's really easy to just say, oh, I'm gonna keep wrapping this around and I'm gonna put my thing on. But what happens is it starts to get really uneven. So in order to create a better result, I encourage you to build one coil at a time. So here's what that means. I'm going to wrap my coil around, and in this case, I'm putting the coil right on top of the base. And to get a coil that fits perfectly, we're gonna do a little trick here. If you can see, we're going to overlap the coils where the end is, and then we're going to take a cutting tool, and if you cut through both pieces, I can take the extra excess piece off, I can take this extra excess piece off, and now I have a coil that fits perfectly, and I'm ready to attach it. Don't forget, whenever we attach anything, you have to slip, score, and seal. So I would get some slip. I would slip both pieces, the base where I'm attaching and the coil that I'm adding. Notice I'm not loading it up. You don't want it to get all slimy and messy, just enough to give it a little something to stick to. And then I'm going to score. Scoring, don't forget, is that scratching the surface. You need more scoring than this. That's not adequate. You do not need to do this. I have students who spend an hour scoring their coil, and you're wasting time. Your slip's gonna be dry by then, your whole clay is gonna be dry by then. It's gonna take you 5 years to make a coil pot. We're not here for 5 years, okay, hopefully. So, score both pieces. I would spend some time scoring this. I'm not gonna do it, you would. And then I'm going to attach that coil directly above the edge of the base below. Do you need to slip, score, and seal this little edge here? Not necessarily, but you could give it a little help and seal it up together. So I've got one coil on. I suggest that you build 2 to 3 coils high before you start smoothing anything. For us, we usually smooth either the inside or the outside or both when we build coil pots. So let's get it 2 or 3 high before we do that. So I'm going to do this very quickly. I would slip And when I put my next coil on, notice I rotate my pot so that the seam here, the connection, is not in the same place it was on the one below. So I'm going to stagger it. And I'm going to do another coil. It's too long. Good. That's better than too short. I'm going to trim it, taking off the extras so I get a perfect fitting coil. And then I would go back and I would slip both pieces. I would score both pieces, and then I would stick and seal that coil on. All right, once you have 2 or 3 high, so you're pretending right now that I have slipped and scored and sealed all this, but I'm not doing it because I want to go faster for demonstration's sake. Okay, so imagine I've slipped, scored, and sealed all these on. That one was too long. Now that I have 2 or 3 coils high, my job is to seal these coils together. So yes, slip scoring will help your pot not fall apart. If you really want coils showing on the outside and the inside, I would need to seal the coils in here. So by dragging a tool, and the curved end of a blade tool works really well. Also the pointed end of a blade tool can work nicely, or the rubber tip tools also work well. So if I want my coils to show on the inside and outside, I need to seal both the inside and outside between the coils. If I don't want them to show, let's say I'm going for a smooth effect on the outside, then you need to start smoothing after 3 coils. So here's how I do it. Pull that clay down or up with your finger. If your clay's soft enough, if you're working kind of, at a good pace, now granted, if it's taking you 20 minutes to roll a coil, it might be a little difficult to do this with your finger. You may need to use a tool, but pull that clay down or up, not across. So look, when I go across, nothing happens. I'm not filling in those cracks. The idea is to fill in the spaces between the coils. If it's not working with your finger, grab a tool. I can push some clay or pull some clay into those cracks, and that's going to seal up all those coils. Once I've gone up and down, then I can go across and I can start to really get a smoother surface. So you're seeing the end result is a smooth pot where you can't even tell I built it with coils. This is really great if you are going to be doing later decoration in terms of carving, additive, subtractive, things like that, and you don't want all your coils showing. So typically we would smooth the outside or the inside. So if I'm doing it on the inside, it's a little harder to see, but same process. I pull down or up. I think down is the best or easiest. And it's really important, no matter what you're doing, that that bottom coil gets sealed to the base. So I might need to use a tool or a finger to be sure that that first coil is really sealed on there well, because that's where a lot of problems happen. If a coil pot fails, the bottom will fall off, or it'll fall off, it'll crack between coils. So this sealing is really, really important. So I can seal the inside, I can seal the outside, or I could do both. And this is kind of the basic way that we make a coil pot. Right now I'm just building a cylinder. So because I stacked these coils directly on the one below them, you can imagine if I keep going, I'm just getting a tube shape. Well, the beauty of making coil pots is that I can get really cool creative organic shape, and this is how we do that. So the second kind of part of this demonstration is how do I shape with coils. So I'm still going to build one coil at a time, but this time when I go to slip and score and seal my coil on, I'm going to be really, really careful with my placement. When I place this coil on, instead of placing it directly on the one below it, I'm going to place it on the outside edge of the one below it. So you'll see in a second here, I'm going to wrap it, still the same, trimming it so it fits perfectly, one coil at a time. I would slip, I would score, okay? And then I would build a couple up before I seal them together. But if I continue to build with coils on the outside edge of the one below it, instead of putting it directly on top, it's pretty obvious, I think, that my shape is going to start to gradually go out. So let me do one more. And look at that, not long enough, right? So sometimes we can cheat and just stretch that clay out. So remember when you roll your coil, how you pull and stretch? If I roll it and I stretch it, look at that. It fits now. So I am going to slip, score, and seal all of these. I'm not doing it, but you would. On, and notice now all of a sudden, instead of getting a cylinder straight up, my pot is starting to angle out. Why? Because I purposely placed that coil on the edge, right? On the edge. Imagine my fingers are 3 more coils. I now have this pot that's going way out here. Your placement determines your shape. So if I place it really far on the outside edge, I'm gonna get a dramatic outward curve. If I just put it slightly on the edge of the one below it, I'll get a gradual curve. And then of course you can also bring your coil pots back in, right? So it's just the opposite. Whereas if I want this pot to start to go in, I could place the coil on the inside edge. And depending on how much, how far I put it on that inside edge will determine how gradually or quickly my shape changes. So again, imagine that I'm slip scoring and sealing all of these. I'm not doing that to save some time for you. But now that I'm putting these on the inside edge, all of a sudden my pot's going in. We build one coil at a time so that it hopefully stays even. Your coils make a difference. If they're weird and wonky, your pot's gonna start to get weird and wonky. And then I highly suggest that after every 3 coils, you go back and either smooth the inside or the outside. Why? Because it's gonna get difficult to do it the taller you build. And secondly, this pot can start to collapse on me. The weight of the wet clay, especially if I'm doing a really cool shape, can start to collapse on me. It's what we call slumping. It just slumps on you. And to avoid that, you need your clay to be a little bit drier, a little bit firmer. So if I take my time in each step, and I take my time to smooth the outside or the inside or both after every 3 coils, that time will allow the clay to dry enough that by the time I start building, I'm not going to have that problem of slumping and sinking. So it does pay to go a little bit slower when you start to build, in the sense that you're giving some strength and support to your pot. So you now know how to build a basic cylindrical shape, 1 coil at a time, slip, score, seal, and we seal up our coils inside, outside, or both after 3. And then if you're creating shape, you need to think about it right away. Some of our pots go out right at the bottom, so I would never put a coil right on top of the base. I'd put it on the outside edge, the outside edge, the outside edge. And another real good rule of thumb, or fingers, use your fingers as a guide. If you're trying to figure out, well, how much further should I go in? How much further should I go out? Your coils are about the size of your fingers. So I can kind of say, okay, if I go 3 in, I might get this shape out of my pot. If I go 3 out, I'm gonna go that shape. If I only go 2 out, it's gonna be that tall. So you can kind of use your fingers as a guide of how many coils it's gonna take to get the shape you want. That's the basics of shaping a coil pot.